Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Community America Credit Union. My name is Joel Goldberg, and I've got a really cool guest today, and one that has given me a tour of his workplace, which we'll get into in a moment. It may not be one that I could properly explain. It's sort of one of those things you have to see, but what it did was give me a really good history and idea of an amazing operation. So my guest today is Jeff Cloud. He's an experienced executive leader in the industrial distribution industry, representing the third generation family ownership of IBT Industrial Solutions. As president and CEO, he is driven by creating a culture-first environment, and that's something I love, which aligns with IBT's strong tradition of tenured and loyal employees. And that's something I saw there too, just some employees that have been there for so long. His success has landed him on multiple industry association boards, as well as supplier advisory councils. He is passionate about the industry and is excited to see what the future has in store for both him and the organization. Over the last 72 years, IBT has grown from a single location with 2 employees to now over 300 employees, 36 locations covering 10 states. And as a business grows, it's difficult to keep the family environment alive, but that is exactly what IBT has been able to accomplish. I was so excited to be able to go over there and just get a feel for the way things run. And I am joined right now by the CEO of IBT, Jeff Cloud. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing great, Joel. Really excited to participate today. Humbled to be on a list of your previous guests as I reviewed earlier in the week. And just really excited to chat a little bit about business, and always like to intertwine it with some Kansas City history and baseball. So it should be a good time.
Yeah, I know you love your Royals. You love your Kansas City. You love, I believe, your Jayhawks. I think I'm correct on that, right?
Oh, you are correct. Rock Chalk Jayhawk for sure.
And I'm a Rock Chalk Jayhawk too now that I've got a freshman there. I was always indifferent before, interested, but kind of Switzerland. And when you go to Wisconsin and you're in Kansas City, it doesn't matter as much as it does to everybody else. I won't have the hatred of some of those other schools, but I have a love now for Rock Chalk. But I want to, and for those that are watching on YouTube, you could see it. And this was a nice little parting gift I got after visiting IBT. And I mean, the cool thing about it, and I know that, those that are listening won't be able to see this, but it chronicles the great history of IBT, at least from 1949 through 2019, 70 years. And before we get into everything that you do, which has evolved and will continue to evolve, what is it like running a company that has been in the family for all these years, 70 plus years, well before you were a thought, to be at the helm right now?
The term I like to use a lot of times is just humbling. We currently have just over about 320 employees over multi-states that really, all came from just both my grandparents, both my grandfather and my grandmother started the company. And throughout the, 70 plus years, this business was built on just phenomenal, loyal employees that were committed to the business, committed to the vision, committed to the ideals that really make up the culture of the business. And what's really great about our business is as we grew, we never lost sight of that. We never lost sight of what was most important to an operation, that once you have found success and cultural engagement and building that environment, it becomes difficult to sustain it. But honestly, I truly believe that that is the reason we've been able to grow at the level we've been able to grow, is we've been able to replicate that every location and every employee we've onboarded. And to me, that's really what's most exciting to me is I can really feel the culture from when the company was founded, even living in today. And that's probably one of the biggest drivers for me each and every day, is making sure that I continually harness, feed that energy, and make sure that we can continue it on to future generations, hopefully down the road.
Right. And it was cool when I toured your headquarters, to just be able to see the different generations there, not just with you, and your dad was popping through. We'll talk about him a little bit later too, but just to see, I know some guys that were in there working that were there when you were a little kid and still going strong. And so there is obviously a loyalty, and I want to talk about that in a bit, and how you maintain that and grow that along with the growth, because that is a challenge. But let's start here, because you'll explain it certainly much better than me. And this is also evolving in terms of IBT and what you do. Let's start with this. How did it begin? It's like, what do they do on the internet? Like, I forget how they do those, like memes or whatever now. It's like, this was then and this is now, or where was I then and where was I now? I'm messing that up a little bit. It's usually like, an awkward picture when you were a kid and then something now. But what was IBT at the start and what is IBT now?
So IBT, we are an industrial distribution company. And what that really means, we're an organization that supports a variety of industries with products and services to keep them up and running. So that either entails us supporting customers with products that go on their machinery, like selling bearings and different equipment that would go on, say, a tractor or a combine or a lawnmower. Or we also support the MRO, which is your maintenance and repair, which are the items that go into the factory that keep the lines running, that produce the items that we either, whether that's food production, whether that's other, mechanical components. But so really how the company was founded, my grandfather actually worked for a company here in Kansas City. And he was a fantastic salesman, very knowledgeable, power transmission individual. And he grew his territory and grew it so much, he was actually making more money than his manager. And his manager didn't like that very much. So his manager came in and said, Forrest, I got to cut your territory back. My grandfather said, okay, I understand. He cut his territory back. And within about 12 to 18 months, had grown his territory back up, making more than, once again, his manager. So the manager was getting ready to do it again. And Forrest said, listen, if you do that, I'm leaving. I'm going on my own. I highly recommend that. I'd rather not be a competitor to you. And the guy said, nope, sorry. It's something we got to do. It's corporate policy. So my grandfather went off with him and my grandmother, took a small loan from his father, opened up his own shingle right in Kansas City. So we are a true Kansas City born and bred organization. He started going out to his old customers and one at a time would bring that business over to himself and started hiring people slowly. And it just kind of organically evolved. And it was really just with the customer top of mind, doing the things that the other guy wouldn't do. And we've grown from power transmission equipment to now we provide pretty much everything you would possibly imagine that you would need in any facility, whether that's electrical products, whether it's safety products, conveyor belt, hose, you name it, we can supply it. So we can really be a one-stop shop for anybody and everybody in the manufacturer, food processing, and just overall mechanical space.
Yeah, it was pretty remarkable walking through and just seeing row by row the variety. It's like, imagine going into something, for the layman like me or anyone that would be at my level if they're listening. Imagine walking through like the largest Costco you've ever seen with just endless aisles of stuff. I mean, and I know that it's not random at all. I mean, you've got incredible systems in place, but the range of companies that you are working with, it's really
Absolutely.
across the board, right?
Well, it's really interesting. I believe the show, How Things Work, I believe that's what it's called. It shows kind of behind the scenes on how the products that we touch each and every day are actually created. And I don't think it's intentional, but a lot of us take that for granted. But those things don't just magically appear. And that's one of the really unique things about our business is we get to kind of get behind the scenes and work with these companies that are making these items that are actually substantially more complex than we ever can appreciate. Making a trash bag is actually a really complex, amazing process. But with that requires a lot of moving pieces, a lot of different, whether power transmission equipment, electrical components. And so as we've evolved with the amount of customers that we interact with, we've had to expand the breadth of product that we support. On average, we sell anywhere from 75 to close to 100,000 SKUs. We have access to well over 1 million because we just never know what our customers are going to need. I mean, it's kind of the beauty is we're not limited by a specific type of customer. I mean, even people like we do a lot of business with hospitals because a lot of people forget, there's a maintenance department in a hospital. Their HVAC unit needs to be running. Their electrical components need to be running. There's a huge food processing facility, i.e. their cafeteria that is feeding hundreds of people. and there's a lot of conveyor belts and things behind the scenes that no one sees. So it really gives us the opportunity to go in and really interact with a lot of different people. But again, that's why you got to see all of that stuff, which has really grown strictly based on what our customers have requested that we support them with.
So I want to go here. I was going to go culture first, but I think I want to hit pandemic because, of course, the pandemic affected everybody in every profession, and in some professions, quite frankly, in a good way. Not that that was the intent. A lot of others had to shut down, and everything in the middle. But in your case, I think it's really interesting because you're dealing with supply chain issues, which you're not the only one. I mean, I can't tell you how many CEOs and executives that I've talked to about that, and they still have their needs. How did the pandemic change everything for you in terms of that, and then in terms of your people?
Yeah, the pandemic was, I mean, as it's devastated almost every industry out there, definitely had a large impact on our business. We were deemed an essential business right out of the gate because we support the pharmaceutical manufacturing facilities as well as food processing throughout the Midwest. So though we're based in Kansas City, excuse me, we do have about 36 locations throughout the Midwest, and we are in the breadbasket of America and the food processing Central America. It's where you process a lot of meat, a lot of chicken, a lot of pork. So we were forced to stay open. And, our branch employees and our folks that are working in our warehouse, those folks do not have the luxury of working remote. They do not have the luxury, you can't ship product if you're, sitting in front of a computer at your home. So there was a substantial amount of our employees that were willing, able, and really just stepped up and said, hey, we're on board with this. And because of the loyalty and the dedication, they were able to kind of, keep things turning, keep things going. And that was with us having to send home about 60% of our workforce that was based at our corporate headquarters. So we did have to kind of do a hybrid model where we worked remotely. And that's something we had never done before. So like a lot of companies trying to learn the nuances of engaging remotely and trying to maintain that culture, as we'll talk about later, I'm sure. But when you don't have that touch and feel, that face-to-face interaction, I think that's a great chapter in your book when you talk about face-to-face and the importance of that interaction, which is a human need. When you're forced into a situation where it's all remote, it becomes extremely difficult. And I think we really were challenged out of the gate to try and figure out how we were going to navigate that with the pandemic. And we really just did our best to figure out how we would do. I think it started as the virtual happy hours, and then we found some technology that would allow us to do some networking events, because there's nothing worse than being on a Google call or a Zoom or whatever platform you use. Nothing worse than being on a call with 60 people. I mean, you don't get anything done. People are talking over. I mean, it's pointless. So we were able to go out and find some platforms that were, smaller table settings, and you could bounce around and feel a little bit more intimate, because again, that's really what IBT has always been about is this concept of the IBT family. And it's hard to keep that connection when, again, you're not interacting on a regular basis and seeing everybody on a regular basis.
That was a challenge that so many dealt with most. And then, in your case, you have to have people in there. So I suppose the hybrid end of things works for those. It has to work because you didn't have to have everyone in the office. But then there's the safety end of things of you have to keep functioning and have people out there fulfilling those orders and making it happen in the warehouse. So how did you navigate that?
We just made sure and kept a high level of communication on anything that was, any changes in policies or whatnot. I mean, we really had to keep our branches energized because they were really on the front lines. I mean, a lot of our outside salespeople were still trying to go and make sales calls whenever possible, engaging with customers when customers were having, major breakdowns and needed our support. So, we really made as big of an effort as we possibly could, and reaching out to our branches, reaching out to those folks that were still really what I would consider on the front lines, though not in the medical field. I can never say enough about those folks that were truly on the front lines. I mean, that was just absolutely unbelievable, the commitment that whole group of individuals were willing to do to try to keep us safe and healthy. but they were putting themselves and their family in harm's way, and we were just doing everything that we possibly could to keep them safe where we could, to put policies in place to keep people from coming into some of those locations, to limit the amount of interaction, and then just show our support any way that we could. I think at one point we put a collage together of all of our branch employees and just wanted to show our appreciation, a way to visualize what was still happening out in our branch locations that we kind of take for granted sometimes. And it's easy when you're behind the scenes and you're not there. You don't realize that every day those folks were doing exactly what they were doing even pre-pandemic. So I can't say enough about them, and I can't say enough about the rest of the staff that, though had to become remote, still were able to be extremely productive and still were able to stay committed to the overall culture and vision of the organization.
So let's talk about that culture, because I believe, and I think this is the proper statement across the board, that if you are a company that has been around for 70 plus years, and if you are a company that is still in the same family, you don't see a lot of third generation family owned businesses that have scaled the way yours has. Maybe the mom and pop store that has managed to stay open, but for IBT and the Cloud family to do what it's done for so long, I don't think you can do that without culture. I don't believe in any way that you could survive like that. So what has been the secret sauce to culture? And you can tell me if I'm wrong on that, but how important is culture?
No, I absolutely firmly believe, and I think if you ask any employee here at IBT, in any, obviously pre-COVID, because we don't really get to do major presentations anymore, but we still do quarterly updates, even though they're virtual. Everything is led with culture. There is no question that is the driving force of our organization. We have what's called our 4 pillars, our 4 heroic pillars that are kind of our values. It's kind of our homegrown, home-created value system, kind of a version of a mission vision. And family and community is our first pillar. So it's not business, it's not revenue, it's not profitability, it's family and community. And we truly base a lot of our decisions and align them with that first pillar. And if it doesn't align with, it making a positive impact to the communities that we serve, if it doesn't bring positivity to the family environment of IBT, we have to really take a step back, and there better be a very good reason why we would want to pursue that. Now, sometimes things do arise that you have to make a business decision, but that doesn't come without a lot of a communication. And if you would match up majority, if not damn near all of our initiatives, they have family and community baked into them one way or another. And, we are really big in community and charity as well. One thing that I'm really proud of with IBT, we have a substantial amount of charities that we've supported over the years. And we belong to a distribution group called Affiliated Distributor, which is a very large conglomerate of independent distributors. And they created an award a few years back for the first time that was a giving award. It was like, which organization out there is really tied into their community? And the first year they offered it, IBT was the recipient of that award because of the work that we do with Heart to Heart here, a local organization that I believe you're familiar with. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are as well. Just a great organization. We give college scholarships to a lot of our employees each and every year for their dependents. We do a Toys for Tots drive every year for during the Christmas season, as well as do another other variety of just charity engagements. Because again, if you're not tied to your community, you're not really fulfilling the culture of IBT, and that's one thing that really is something that I've never lost sight of. And I literally probably the first thing I wake up every day is making sure that I'm abiding by that same direction that my grandparents started, that my father and my uncle picked up the reins and continued on, that I feel is my responsibility moving forward.
And do you feel like you have been able to take that culture and replicate it in all of your different branches in all the different cities and towns that you're in?
I wouldn't say I've replicated it. I'd say the organization has. And that's what's so amazing about the business. Though, we've got to, start at the top and make sure we are providing the right direction and leading in a way that aligns with that cultural expectation. I just can't say enough for the employee base that takes that and runs with it, whether it's our regional managers, whether it's our store managers, even individuals that may not be in a managerial role, but still, providing that cultural fabric and that, that guidance to other younger and newer employees within the business. I mean, our tenure is one of the most amazing things, really, in industry, in any industry that I've spoken to with a variety of business leaders throughout my tenure. It is very common for us to celebrate not only a 20, 25, 30-year anniversary, but 35, 40. This year alone, I believe we celebrated 3 45-year anniversaries within the organization.
Huh.
And that's just unheard of. I mean, people, and that's honestly, that's one of my favorite things, is to celebrate that. At 40 years, we give a really nice ring to everybody. Not quite like the Royals ring, don't get me wrong, but it's a nice ring that's got 8 diamonds, a 5-year diamond, or one diamond representing every 5 years of service. And I love when we get everybody together. A few years ago, we had a company-wide event, and we brought every 40-year employee, regardless of position, into Kansas City. And there was about 27 people on stage. And it was just so humbling when you see some of these younger employees just looking at that stage and seeing the years of service and the commitment that they did, that you could just feel the energy in the room. And that's one thing I want to, make sure and continue on. And I hope to give a lot more rings in the future, to say the least.
It's really cool, and it's so interesting to see so many people stay. And you know this as well as I do. I mean, staying that long isn't just about the money. It's not just, you got to get everything right, and because there are always other opportunities. And so for them to stay, and sometimes they pass that on to their family, and it's all about taking care of people. And that's interesting to me too, because you have such a wide range of people in terms of age there. You and I had a pretty robust discussion about this. I mean, we're similar age. I got you by some years, but we're in the same generation. And there's this debate. I think this debate's gone on since the beginning of time, right? It's sort of the modern day version of it is the get off my lawn discussion, and okay, boomer, and all that type of stuff. But the world does change. I think the most successful organizations are ones that embrace those generations. And I think there'll always be pushback against that. That's just sort of the way we're wired. But I know that you're one that really embraces it. So how do you see that as one that came up learning from a different generation and now leading older and younger generations that are there? How do you kind of take all that in, and what's your philosophy?
Yeah, Joel, and that is a great question. It's, I've said in multiple seminars and people trying to talk through this not just 2 generations, but in a lot of instances 3 generations, and damn near getting to 4 generations, because seeing a lot of baby boomers that are not wanting to retire, enjoy what they're doing, they're still being productive. So traditionally staying on longer than historically people would want to retire, which, if people are productive, fantastic. It really takes a mindset to realize that you have to interact with different generations in a different manner. And it's not saying any one generation is better or worse. It's just we are wired differently. We take praise in a different way. Recognition can be in a lot of different forms. And it's amazing where if you just peanut butter spread and blanketly go after, I think, it's all about the money. Well, it might not be all about the money, or it's all about the acknowledgement and recognition. Well, it's not all about that. You really have to fine tune it based on what the expectation is. I think my biggest response to just in general is making sure that you don't understate the value that each generation brings. And what I mean by that is your traditional, 20, 30 years ago, it was about who was coming in earliest, who was staying the latest. And that was how, people measured success and measured commitment. Well, now in the modern world we're living in, we have individuals that, though there is a level of commitment, we don't want guys come rolling in at 11 and leaving at 2. You're really never off the clock. I mean, I don't care if it's 11 o'clock at night. I don't care if it's a Sunday morning. People know that you're accessible. So this whole 40-hour work week doesn't really exist. And so being a little bit more flexible, more nimble, understanding the importance of a family work-life balance, that's really kind of a driving force for some of the younger up-and-coming individuals. And it's not all about the money. And so it's just making sure that you're fine-tuning where it makes sense, and bifurcating those communications between the different generations is extremely important.
It's again, I think getting that right is part of the culture piece, and it's part of the longevity. If you don't get that right, you just don't stay around that long. And the world's different than it was when your grandfather started this. The world is different
Yeah.
than when your dad started it. And I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing that, from my limited conversations with your father, who still very much likes to pop in and is still involved,
Absolutely.
but not at the level that he was before, which he certainly earned that right. I'm suspecting he's a guy that just can't shut it down forever. He still needs to be able to do this stuff. But I wonder, and then I'll get to my baseball theme questions, if he sort of sees things the same way as you do in terms of the generations. Maybe not understanding the younger generations to the level you do, but embracing it the same way.
Well, I mean, he obviously, led the charge for many years as our cultural leader, managing the business, and instilled those same ideals into me that now I'm trying to convey to our employee base. But every generation looks at the world a little differently. But the beauty of our organization and our culture is, when we talk about things like pay and or what drives behavior or what nuances make a bigger impact depending on generational, that's not a cultural discussion. The culture itself transcends beyond just what your age bracket is. If you are feeling like you are part of a family, you're part of something bigger than yourself, and that everybody is on board together, then all those other things are nuances. Those are tweaks. Those are tweaking dials and getting to know people on a personal level. But as long as you stay true to really the culture that has proven success over 70 years, I think you find a way to navigate. I think one of the things companies do is they get confused on what's cultural fabric and what's how you drive the business. And they change the culture to match with where they think they need to be, where the culture, again, can transcend over decades. It's the nuance. It's, your values, your morals, your principles. Those don't change. Those are stagnant. It's about how you engage with your employees and make them feel like they are part of the family, if in fact that's the culture you want to create.
You guys have certainly done that. Let's get to the baseball themed questions for you or for IBT, however you want to go at this, Jeff. What's the biggest home run you've hit?
I'm still fairly young in my career. I've been at IBT now 15 years, which again, like, as I mentioned, the tenure, like I'm one of the newbies, but did grow up in the business. But I would say my biggest home run so far is, my ability to put together a team of individuals to manage the business. It's very easy for a lot of leaders to feel the importance of being in front and center, taking the limelight, wanting to be the one accomplishing certain goals. And honestly, the thing that drives me is the business being successful and showering that success and that thanks to those individuals that are actually making it happen. And COVID's a perfect example. If I wouldn't have had the team I had in place, and that goes beyond just my executive team, just the overall leadership of the business, I'm not sure what COVID would have looked like. I mean, I can imagine an environment where businesses that did not have strong leadership, didn't build strong teams around them, were running ragged, were constantly trying to figure out what to do, probably had a lot of turnover. We had little to no turnover throughout all of COVID. I mean, it was people rolled their sleeves up and said, we're going to go make this happen. And that doesn't happen unless you build a foundation and a team that you feel confident can really tackle, any obstacle gets thrown their way. Now, we weren't anticipating COVID, but who knows what the next obstacle is going to be. And the fact that we were able to be so successful during a time of just tragedy and difficult, and uncertainty and never knowing what tomorrow will bring, just gives me a huge level of confidence in our future success and just makes me feel like I absolutely put the right team together and couldn't have had a better team to be able to make that work.
Right. And surviving the pandemic. How about a swing and a miss? And what did you learn from it?
The biggest swing and a miss just in my career that I took, and it was prior to my current role, it was a few levels down in my career. And it's not any one specific thing. It's just a general attitude of reacting too quickly. I think leaders, you can see something, hear something, whether it's an engagement with a customer, an engagement with a fellow employee. If you react too quickly without getting all of the information, it can be so detrimental when you find out that you don't have the whole story. I mean, if you find out details after the fact, not only have you potentially damaged, your relationship with whatever individual that you were engaging with, you also damage your reputation. Because now all of a sudden people are wondering, well, is this going to be the way this individual reacts to everything? Or can you take your time and make sure you've got all of the information, all the facts, move a little slower and make the right decision? So that was definitely something I'm a fairly high energy individual. I've always have been. And it was something that really required some mentorship with some individuals in the organization to work with me to just make sure, hey, slow down. You want to make sure and make the right decision. Now, will we still make wrong decisions occasionally? Absolutely. I mean, sometimes you can't get all the facts, but just don't jump to conclusions the second you hear something, because it can really, really be a long-term negative impact to your relationship and your ability to lead down the road.
It's that good old take a breath and let it sit a little bit. Don't overreact. Don't react quickly. We all have that in us, and it seems like hopefully not all of us, maybe. Hopefully we with age and wisdom, we learn those skills a little bit better. How about small ball? What is small ball to you? The little things that add up to the big results.
So to me, I mean, and it's such a great concept because it really aligns with what I really believe. You take care of the small things, the big things take care of themselves. But one of the areas of management that I've always really kind of focused my attention on is never allowing too much time to pass when issues arise. And I know that sounds simple, but so many times it will be a small issue that will pop up between maybe you and somebody or other coworkers that just kind of let it fester and don't really tackle it head on. And next thing you know, it turns into a really big deal, and individuals don't even realize what the original issue was to begin with. And so in my career, I've always found the importance, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how unpleasant, if there's something that needs to be discussed, you take the time to sit down and you have the conversation. And I have found almost every time it's never as big of a deal as you think it's going to be. You actually end up stronger because of it, because the individual that you're interacting with feels confident that there is a problem, you're going to address it. And you can usually, eliminate future issues down the road as well. So it's just those little things, not allowing, the little stuff to stick around and not address it. And then all of a sudden, when a big issue arises, you can tackle it head on, and you don't have all this baggage of these little things that are still floating out there that you haven't really addressed.
Good stuff. All right. So we get to the end and we'll take a little trip around the bases, what we call rounding the bases. 4 final questions. You don't know what these are, but they're all in your wheelhouse, and one you already tipped me off on. So I'm interested. I don't know exactly the answer or the background, but I was interested to find out that you are a trained and degreed culinary chef. I didn't know that. I've only, gone out to get lunch with you. I haven't had you make a meal. I don't know that I will, but tell me about that background and your passion for that. That's a little bit different than your world.
Yes, not your traditional transition from culinary professional into bearing and power transmission distribution. But yes, after college, I broke away, and it was honestly the best decision I'd ever made. I was incredibly passionate about cooking. Actually, it was something that me and my grandfather did growing up in Kansas City. I mean, what's more Kansas City than barbecue? Yeah. And from the age of about 9 years old, my grandfather and I did competitive barbecuing. So we would do the competitive barbecue circuit, which is now so far surpassed me. I still do a couple of them, but it's such big business. But back then, they was a little bit smaller, but just had a blast and really enjoyed the nuances of cooking. And it kind of grew into this kind of side passion. Worked in a lot of restaurants growing up. And it was, for my professional career, it was the best thing I could have ever done. For those that grow up in a family business, it is a different environment. I'd be lying if I just said otherwise. I mean, there's just, you've got to, there's things that you need to experience outside the 4 walls of a business to really understand how the world works. And those years away, working as I wasn't always a chef, working as a cook, scooping out broken glass out of drains and emptying fryers and mopping floors for multiple years. It really gets you a good sense of work ethic. And though necessarily the skills themselves don't align with, industrial distribution, the overall work ethic I absolutely brought over into my next career choice, coming back into the family business. And it's done nothing but help me along the way.
Pretty cool. And I don't know. I assume that your wife or members of the family may have requests every now and then. I don't know.
I am very blessed. My wife is a phenomenal cook.
Perfect.
But honestly, she's probably better than me at these days. I'm a little bit out of sorts, but once in a while, yes, I do love to get back into it and make a nice big meal. It still is a passion of mine whenever I have the time.
All right, good stuff. The second question as we round the bases, and I think I popped it up before, but I'll mention the website is ibtinc.com. Of course, we're in the 21st century. You need a website. It's not like your business is antiquated. You're constantly having to evolve. But I know that you guys are advancing this as well, and getting into, not just getting into, have been in the e-commerce world. And that's not going to be like Amazon for someone like me or the average person, but for your customers, I'm guessing, even in what can be an old school business, I think at times they want to push a button, I assume. So that has evolved, I believe, right?
Absolutely. No, it's the trend has been evolving over well over a decade for the need for online engagement. Our actual e-commerce site is labeled shopibt.com, but it's accessible through IBT Inc. And though our business, it's a really nice blended approach. There are a substantial amount of customers, more and more, especially with the younger generation coming on board, that expect to have that channel. And IBT obviously still very entrenched with our ability to support our customers face to face, getting out there and whatnot. In a distribution model, if you don't have the ability for customers to purchase product online and be able to expose your entire breadth of product online, then eventually you will have enough erosion that will make you irrelevant. And change is the one thing that's constant. We have a theme every year in our organization. This year it's legacy of change. IBT has always been evolving. We started with strictly selling bearing and power transmission equipment. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we sell a full breadth of product. We are in safety. We are also we do a lot of training, and this e-commerce journey is no different. It's just matching the needs of our customers with the available resources that we have, and make sure that we're providing that and meeting that expectation of what they need us to do to make their lives as easy as possible.
So yeah, and when you go to that site, and that's for your customers, but even on ibtinc.com, where it promotes shopibt.com, says where you can browse over 500,000 products. So that kind of gets us back to the discussion before of the variety of what you have to offer, which brings me to my third question, because you told me something that I was kind of envisioning, a young Jeff Cloud going to his dad's work and then just going and having fun with some of the other kids or your siblings or whoever it was. I think you were telling me the story about just getting into trouble and hide and seek and all of that type of stuff. And I'm wondering what those memories are. I don't know what you want to share or what you don't want to share, but I was trying to envision like this, this massive facility and how much fun that must have been for a kid growing up before you really understood the intricacies of the business.
It was, yes. I was very lucky. My father always exposed me to the business at a very young age. I mean, well before I even knew what I was seeing. But our facility here in Kansas City that supports our other branch locations with inventory, it's about 125,000 square feet. So, for a 8-year-old, 10-year-old kid, it's just a playground. I mean, it's just, there's so much space with high bay racking and places to hide and rows of different racking to be able to, we would literally bring 2 or 3 of my buddies, and we would come in. My dad used to work on Sunday nights, and we'd come in and turn on the lights in the warehouse, and we'd run around and play tag and hide. And then when I got a little older, I went back and realized the places that I was hiding was under conveyor belts that weighed 30,000 pounds. And the safety factor of that is terrifying. But who gets scared as a 10-year-old kid? I mean, you're just having fun, running around, having a blast. But no, I can recall walking up the stairs that I walk up every single day as a very young child. And sometimes it's kind of humbling when I sit back and can just, coming in on the weekends when no one's here and trying to put myself back as that young child. And the things I would have liked to have told him, prior to where I am today would have been fantastic. But yeah, just a lot of great memories, and a lot of employees that remember me growing up in the business as well. I mean, there's with the tenure, there's a lot of folks that I had a relationship back when I was 20, 30 years ago, and it's great to still have those interactions and to be able to work with them on a professional level now.
Okay, last question as we round the bases, and I think this gets to just some of the fun and the culture and making this a good place, not just taking care of people, but providing experiences. And one of the cool things that I learned was that you guys have had a lot of fun over the years and still have a lot of fun. It had to slow down a bit, obviously, during COVID. I know George Brett for years was basically part of the IBT family, but maybe just share a little bit of some of those ranging experiences, which I know people must talk about on a regular basis, just some of those memories.
Yeah, we've always tried to make it a point to engage as many IBT employees as possible. We always do multiple events. And again, COVID has slowed us down, but even this year, just recently, we did an event for all of our employees here in Kansas City. Went out to the Pepsi party porch, went to a Royals game, and you mentioned George. He's been such a great advocate of our organization. My father and him had a good relationship. Did a lot of time down in fantasy camp, and George spoke at a variety of different events, whether that be larger customer events. We had done multiple events out at the Speedway where we actually bring in, our first year, I think it was close to 2,000 customers, rented the whole Speedway out for a couple of days. And George came in and just gave an absolutely fantastic speech. But what I loved about it was about this, seventh or eighth time George had engaged with us. So it was not your typical, what you would expect somebody of that stature to come in and give a speech. It was heartfelt. He had met multiple people throughout the business and can probably tell some stories on us as well that we'd almost rather he not. I mean, we like to have a good time, but it was just a great experience. I think the employees, it goes back to that culture and that tenure. We go to the nth degree to try to make as much or create as much opportunities to get to know people on a personal level. And that includes people like George and other people outside that have embraced the culture of IBT and have enjoyed being a part of it. And it's really been special. And hey, we got a lot of years to go. I hope to make a lot more great memories as the company continues to grow and expand, and we get prepared for that fourth generation.
Many years to come, beginning in 1949 and still going strong and better than ever, and surviving a pandemic and continuing to learn and take care of customers, take care of people internally and externally as well. Jeff, this has been great. I knew it would be. Want to let everybody know, if you want more information about IBT, you can go to ibtinc.com. And if you want to find them on social media, IBT Inc. for anything, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, you name it, it's got IBT Inc. on it. Jeff, thanks so much for spending time, for talking culture, for talking about the generations and the family business and continued success.
Joel, thank you so much. It was my pleasure. Again, I'm humbled to even have the opportunity, and go Royals.
Sounds good to me. Thanks, Jeff.